At 1 a.m., my parents begged me for $20,000, saying my brother was dying. I asked one question they couldn't answer. By morning, the police were at my door. By morning, the lie had already moved faster than I could catch it. And when the police knocked, I understood my parents hadn't called me for help. They had called to make me responsible. My phone lit up at 12:47 a.m., the screen glowing against my nightstand. Mom, I should have known right then. My mother never called after 9 unless something was burning, bleeding, or already dead. But when you're ripped out of sleep, instinct gets there before logic does. I answered, Rachel. Her voice was shaking, thin and sharp, the kind of panic that makes your whole body go rigid. Oh God, Rachel, thank God you picked up. I sat up so fast the room tilted. What happened? Beside me, Matt shifted under the blanket but didn't wake. He could sleep through thunder, alarms, and apparently whatever disaster my family had decided to drag into our bedroom. It's Tyler, she said. Of course it was. My brother, 29 years old, unemployed more often than not, allergic to consequences, and somehow still the emotional center of every crisis our family had survived for the last decade. He's in the emergency room, my mother said. They're saying he needs surgery. Emergency surgery, Rachel. They said. Her voice broke into sobs. Real ones, maybe. Or good ones. I'd heard my mother cry only a handful of times in my life. When my grandmother died. When my father had his heart attack. When my sister Lauren wrecked her SUV with my nephew strapped into the back seat. And now this. Then my father's voice cut in behind her hard and controlled. $20,000. They need it now or they're sending him home. The number hit wrong, not just because it was huge, because it was too clean, too immediate, too prepared. $20,000 at 12:47 a.m. for emergency surgery. Some tiny part of my brain caught on that and wouldn't let go. What hospital? I asked, already swinging my legs out of bed. The hardwood was cold under my feet. I'll come right now. What happened to him? Silence. Not static, not a dropped call, a pause. Mom, I said, what hospital is he at? Mercy General, my father answered quickly, too quickly. But you don't need to come, he said. You need to wire the money. They gave us a deadline for the deposit. I froze. Deposit? My mother sniffed, but her crying had changed. It had thinned out, like she was listening more than falling apart. Emergency rooms don't require deposits before treating people, I said. That's not how hospitals work. It's not the ER, she said, suddenly steadier. It's the surgical floor. They said because he doesn't have insurance. Then I'll call the hospital directly, I said. Give me his room number. Another pause, longer this time. Rachel, my father said. There it was, that voice, the one he used when he expected me to stop being a person and become useful, the voice that had made me apologize for things I hadn't done since I was 8 years old. Stop asking questions and do this, he said. Your brother is in pain. Every minute you waste arguing is another minute he suffers. And there it was too, the old hook, Tyler hurting somewhere, my mother crying, my father disappointed, me, the stable one, the selfish one, the daughter with a good job and a joint checking account standing between my brother and disaster because I wanted details. For 32 years, that worked. But something in me had hardened over the past year. Maybe it was therapy. Maybe it was the loan I'd co-signed for Tyler that he never paid. The one that wrecked my credit while my parents told me not to make him feel worse. Maybe it was the way Lauren could forget birthdays, ignore calls, and still be going through a lot while I was expected to produce money like a machine with no feelings attached. Maybe I was just tired. What hospital? I repeated. My voice came out flatter than I expected. Name, address, room number. We told you Mercy General, my father snapped. Which Mercy General? There are 2 within driving distance. My mother started crying louder. Why are you being like this? She said. He's your brother. Don't you care that he's... If you can't tell me where he is, I interrupted, then call Lauren. The air went dead. My hand tightened around the phone. She's your favorite anyway. The words slipped out before I could soften them, before I could bury them where I'd buried every other ugly, honest thing for 3 decades. No one breathed. Then my father spoke, low and furious. You're really going to do this? You're going to let your brother suffer because of your petty little... I hung up. For a second, I just stood there in the dark, phone in my hand, my pulse hitting so hard it felt like something inside me was trying to get out. I waited for it to ring again. It didn't. That was almost worse. I set the phone face down on the nightstand like it might bite me, then climb back under the covers. My body was shaking, but not from the cold. Matt rolled toward me, eyes barely open. Everything okay? I stared at the ceiling. Yeah, I whispered. Go back to sleep. He did. I didn't. I lay there until the black outside the window softened into gray, replaying every word. The missing room number, the fake urgency, my mother's sobs switching off too cleanly, my father using guilt like a key he still thought fit the lock. By sunrise, I had almost convinced myself I'd overreacted. Almost. Then someone knocked on the front door. Not a neighbor knock, not a delivery. 3 firm hits. Matt woke that time. I already knew before I looked through the peephole that whatever my parents had started after I hung up had not ended with the call. The moment the officer stepped inside, the story stopped belonging to my family. It became evidence, and evidence has a way of making every old excuse look deliberate. The knock came at 6:13 a.m. Not soft, not hesitant. 3 hard strikes against the front door, the kind that makes your nervous system light up before your brain has time to form a thought. Police knock. Process server knock. Something is already wrong knock. I pulled a sweatshirt over my pajama shirt and walked toward the door on legs that didn't feel connected to me. Through the peephole, I saw 2 officers on my porch. One older, broad-shouldered, silver at the temples. One younger, buzz cut, notepad already in hand. My first thought was immediate and sickening. Tyler is dead. They're here because Tyler is dead. And I hung up. I opened the door. Yes, my voice barely came out. Rachel Whitman, the older officer asked. I nodded. His badge read, Sergeant Hayes. The younger one stood half a step behind him, watching my face too closely. We need to ask you some questions about a phone call you received last night, Sergeant Hayes said. May we come in? My hand tightened on the doorframe. What phone call? But I already knew. A call regarding a family emergency, he said, and a request for $20,000. The floor seemed to shift under me. I stepped back and let them in. Suddenly, my living room looked humiliatingly normal. Matt's work boots by the entry, a coffee mug on the side table, a throw blanket half folded over the couch. All those quiet pieces of an ordinary life, now sitting under the eyes of strangers. Sergeant Hayes sat on the couch without asking. The younger officer, Officer Nolan, stayed standing, pen hovering over his notepad. Walk me through the call, Hayes said, setting a small recorder on the coffee table. Start to finish. So I did. I told them the time, my mother's voice, the crying, Tyler supposedly in the emergency room, my father cutting in with that hard command for $20,000, the hospital name that came too fast, the room number they wouldn't give me, the pressure, the guilt, my father's anger when I kept asking questions, and then the last thing I said before I hung up, call Lauren, she's your favorite anyway. The words sounded smaller in daylight, meaner, but also true. When I finished, both officers were quiet. Officer Nolan looked up first. Did you send any money? No. Did you call the hospital to verify? I swallowed. No, I didn't know which one to call. They wouldn't give me enough information. The shame came anyway, hot and pointless. I hadn't sent money. I hadn't checked. I had just hung up and lain there all night, punishing myself with every possible version of what might have happened. Sergeant Hayes gave a slow nod. Mrs. Whitman, the number that called you last night was spoofed. It was made to appear as though it came from your mother's phone, but the actual source routed through a voice-over internet service outside the country. I stared at him. Spoofed. The word landed, but it didn't settle. The voices you heard, Officer Nolan said carefully, were likely AI-generated or altered recordings. We've seen more of this lately. Emergency scams, virtual kidnapping scams. They use personal details to make the threat feel real. My knees weakened. I sat down in the chair across from them harder than I meant to. So Tyler isn't hurt. We checked emergency rooms within 50 miles, Hayes said. No one named Tyler Whitman was admitted last night. Relief hit so violently I almost laughed. Then I almost cried. Then neither thing happened. I just sat there, gripping the arms of the chair, trying to breathe around the fact that my brother had not been suffering somewhere while I ignored him. Then another thought slid in behind it. Cold, precise. How did they know? I asked. The officers looked at me. How did they know my brother's name? How did they know to call me? How did they know $20,000 was possible? A small pause passed between them. Not long, long enough. That, Sergeant Hayes said, is what we're trying to determine. Officer Nolan's pen moved once across the page. These scammers can get information from social media, public records, data breaches, Hayes continued, sometimes from someone close to the target, knowingly or unknowingly, someone close. The word stayed in the room after he stopped speaking. We'd like you to come down to the station and make a formal statement, Officer Nolan said. We'll also need access to your phone, call logs, texts, anything related to last night. I nodded because nodding was easier than speaking, but my mind had already left the room, someone close. The police station smelled like burned coffee and disinfectant pretending to be lemon. They led me into a small interview room with gray walls, a metal table, 2 chairs, and a camera tucked up in the corner. Then they left me alone. 10 minutes in that room felt engineered to make a person confess to something. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. Pale face, messy hair, barely any sleep. A woman who looked guilty even though she didn't know what crime she was standing near. When the door opened again, Sergeant Hayes returned with a woman in her mid-40s wearing a navy blazer and no expression she hadn't chosen carefully. This is Detective Marla Quinn, he said. She handles financial fraud. Detective Quinn sat across from me and opened a laptop. Rachel, she said, like we were already past formalities. I'm going to ask you some questions that may feel personal. I need honest answers, even if they make your family look bad. My throat tightened. Okay. Tell me about your relationship with them. I blinked. What does that have to do with the call? Her eyes stayed on mine. Usually, everything. So I told her. Not all at once, not cleanly, but enough. I told her about my father, Frank, a retired lineman who believed family loyalty meant obedience, especially from daughters. I told her about my mother, Diane, who could make disappointment sound like concern so smoothly you didn't notice the blade until later. I told her about Tyler, how every emergency in our family eventually became my responsibility. Rent, car payments, legal fees, loans that were never called loans once I was the one paying them. And then I told her about Lauren, the favorite, the daughter who could disappear for weeks and still be fragile, the one my parents protected from consequences with both hands while I was handed bills and told I was strong enough to understand. Detective Quinn typed without interrupting. That silence made me say more than I planned. I told her about the loan I had co-signed for Tyler, how he stopped paying after 3 months, how my parents said pressing him would push him over the edge, how my credit score dropped while Tyler posted fishing photos from a rented cabin in Idaho. Quinn's fingers paused. Who knew about your finances? I looked up. What? Who knew you had access to $20,000? I almost said everyone. Then I stopped, because not everyone did. My parents knew Matt and I had been saving for a down payment. Lauren knew because my mother had complained to her that I was hoarding money while family struggled. Tyler knew because he had once joked that I should just buy him a truck and call it early inheritance. Detective Quinn watched my face change. There it is, she said quietly. I felt my stomach drop. What? She turned the laptop slightly, just enough for me to see a line of account activity, a phone number, and a timestamp I didn't understand yet. The scammers knew a very specific amount, she said, and they knew exactly which pressure point to use. I stared at the screen, then she said the part that made the room go still. Rachel, this wasn't random. The theft hadn't started with the phone call. It had started inside my parents' house. And somebody there had been patient enough to build a trap around my life. Detective Quinn waited for me to answer, but the room had gone too quiet. My family. The word felt different now. Less like a bond, more like a list of people with access. I don't know, I said finally. It was the most honest thing I had said all morning. Quinn didn't react. She just kept watching me with those steady, practiced eyes. Tell me about your mother, she said. So I did. Diane had spent her life calling herself a homemaker, as if that explained everything she had endured and everything she had excused. She ran the house, kept the birthdays straight, remembered who hated onions, who needed laundry done, who owed money, who had failed again, but she also kept score, quietly, permanently. I told Quinn about Tyler, the golden son who could wreck cars, lose jobs, borrow money, and still be described as trying. I told her about Lauren, 26, and still living at home, still treated like a tired teenager instead of an adult woman who knew exactly how to avoid responsibility. Then I told her about me, the middle child, the useful one, the one who had been trained so early to fix things that I used to mistake exhaustion for love. Quinn typed a few notes, then asked, how many times in the past year have your parents asked you for money? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I started counting in my head. The car repair, the overdue electric bill, Tyler's temporary rent issue, Lauren's dental bill. My mother's credit card, my father's truck tires, the emergency that wasn't really an emergency, then the next one, then the one after that. I don't know, I said. 10, 15. And how much have you given them? My face burned. Over what period? Let's say 3 years. I looked down at my hands wrapped around the paper coffee cup Quinn had given me. The coffee tasted like cardboard and burnt plastic, but I needed something to hold. Maybe 40,000, I said. Quinn's expression stayed still, but something passed behind her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or pity. Did they ever pay you back? I gave a small laugh, but it didn't sound like me. They said they would. That wasn't my question. No, I said. They didn't. Quinn turned the laptop toward me. I'm going to show you something. A bank activity screen filled the monitor. My name, my account, a timestamp from the night before. Last night at 12:53 a.m., she said, 6 minutes after the call ended, someone attempted to initiate a wire transfer from your checking account. The room cooled around me. What? The attempt was flagged by your bank's fraud system because of the time and amount. It was blocked. That alert is what brought this to law enforcement. I stared at the screen, unable to connect the neat little lines of text with the feeling of someone reaching into my life while I was still sitting in bed shaking. Someone tried to steal from my account. Someone tried to transfer $20,000, Quinn said, to a newly opened account registered under the name Tyler Whitman. I stopped breathing. Tyler? Your brother's name, social security number, and date of birth were used to open it 6 days ago, she said. The application was submitted online. The IP address traces back to a residential connection here in Portland. My voice came out thin. Where? Quinn didn't answer right away. She didn't have to. Your brother's current address is your parents' house, correct? I nodded once. And Lauren lives there too? Yes. Quinn closed the laptop just enough to break my stare from the screen. Rachel, I need to ask directly, do you believe anyone in your family could be involved? The question sat between us like something alive. I wanted to say no. I wanted the automatic answer, the loyal answer, the daughter answer. No, they're manipulative but not criminal. No, they take too much, but they wouldn't steal. No, they hurt me, but there's still a line. Except I couldn't find the line anymore. Not after the fake call, not after the account, not after the amount. I don't know, I whispered again. Quinn gave one small nod, like she had expected that answer. Then she reopened the laptop. Here's what we know so far. The spoofed call came through a VoIP service that requires payment and a user account. We're working on records, but services like that often accept cryptocurrency or fake registration details. She clicked to another page. The wire transfer was initiated using your online banking credentials. That means someone had your username, password, and enough personal information to answer your security questions. My stomach tightened. I have two-factor authentication. You do now, Quinn said. You enabled it yesterday morning after your bank contacted you. But 6 days ago, when this account was opened and the setup likely began, you didn't. Heat crawled up my neck. I had meant to do it for months. I had ignored every warning email. I had told myself I'd handle it later. Later had apparently arrived wearing a badge. The receiving account used Tyler's identity, Quinn continued, but we do not currently believe he opened it. I looked up. Why not? Because we spoke to him this morning. My chest tightened again, but differently this time. You talked to Tyler. We did. He was confused, angry, and adamant that he had not been in an emergency room, had not requested surgery, and had not opened that account. He filed an identity theft report about an hour ago. That should have relieved me. It didn't, because Quinn wasn't finished. Tyler told us something else, she said. About 2 weeks ago, he lost his wallet. I slowly set the coffee down. It contained his driver's license, social security card, and debit card. He reported the debit card missing to the bank and got a replacement. He did not file a police report. My mouth had gone dry. Where did he lose it? Quinn held my gaze. He said he left it on the kitchen counter at your parents' house. When he went back for it, it was gone. He assumed he had misplaced it somewhere else. The implication unfolded slowly, then all at once. Someone in that house had taken Tyler's wallet. Someone in that house had used his identity to open the account. Someone in that house knew my banking habits, my savings, my brother's role in the family, and exactly which wound to press so I'd stop thinking and start obeying. I rubbed my thumb over the rim of the paper cup until it bent. I need to ask you something, I said. Quinn waited. The voices on the phone. You said they were AI generated or manipulated. My throat tightened. But they sounded exactly like my parents. Quinn's face didn't change. That usually requires source audio, she said. I stared at her. Recordings, voicemails, videos, social media clips, anything with enough clean speech to train or imitate a voice. My mind moved before I could stop it. My mother's long Facebook videos from family barbecues. My father leaving angry voicemails when I didn't answer fast enough. Lauren recording everything, always laughing behind the phone. Tyler posting clips from the kitchen while my parents argued in the background like it was entertainment. There was audio everywhere. But Quinn was still watching me like there was one more door in the room and she was waiting for me to notice it. What? I asked. She turned the laptop back toward herself. The call didn't only use your parents' voices, she said quietly. It used details that were never public. My fingers went numb. Then she asked the question that made the whole room tilt. Rachel, who in your family knows your security answers? The answer had been sitting in front of me the whole time. Not hidden, not complicated, just too ugly for me to let myself look at it. Who knows your security answers? Detective Quinn repeated. I opened my mouth, then closed it, because the first answer was no one. The real answer was worse. My mother, I said. Quinn didn't move. Last year, I added, my voice scraping on the words. When my dad had his heart attack, she called me while I was at a work conference in Denver. She said the ambulance bill had to be paid immediately or there would be problems. I panicked. I could still see the hotel carpet under my bare feet, the half-open laptop, my mother crying so hard I couldn't understand half of what she said. I walked her through logging into my bank account from their computer, I said. I gave her the password. Security answers, everything. I meant to change it after. But you didn't, Quinn said. No. The shame was hot enough to feel physical. She didn't soften it for me. Once someone has access like that, they don't need to ask twice. I stared at the table. The pattern clicked into place with a quiet, brutal efficiency. The more I said no, the more desperate the emergencies became. 6 months of therapy had made me harder to move, so someone had built an emergency big enough to move me anyway. My therapist, Dr. Elaine Porter, had called it financial abuse. At the time, I hated the phrase. It sounded too dramatic, too clean, too official for a family that mostly hurt me through sighs, guilt, and carefully timed silence. They trained you to respond to fear with money, Dr. Porter had said. When you stop responding, the fear usually escalates. She had been right. First, Tyler needed rent or he'd be homeless. Then Lauren needed her car fixed or she'd lose her job. Then my parents needed help with medical bills or my father would go without medication. Every request came wrapped in the same message. If you say no, someone suffers. If you say no, you are the problem. I've been saying no more, I told Quinn. She nodded like she already knew, and they didn't like that. I laughed once, quietly. It wasn't humor. It was something breaking without sound. No, they didn't. Quinn leaned back. Rachel, I'm going to advise you not to contact them while this investigation is active. I won't, I said immediately, and I meant it, because I didn't know what I would say, because part of me still wanted them to explain it in a way that made them innocent, because another part of me already knew they couldn't. 2 hours later, my mother called. Her name lit up my screen while I sat beside Detective Quinn in another interview room, my untouched coffee going cold between my hands. For 1 second, I just stared at it. Then I answered and handed the phone to Quinn, exactly like she had told me to do. Quinn put it on speaker. Rachel? My mother's voice came through tight and breathless. Honey, the police were just here. They were asking all these questions about Tyler. What is going on? Why would you call the police on your own family? There it was again. Not are you okay? Not what happened. Just the accusation dressed as confusion. Quinn spoke before I could. Mrs. Whitman, this is Detective Marla Quinn with Financial Crimes. I'm here with your daughter. I need you to listen carefully. You and members of your household are part of an active fraud investigation. A sharp inhale. Fraud, my mother said. We didn't do anything. Rachel, tell her. Tell her we didn't. Mrs. Whitman, Quinn cut in, her voice cold enough to settle the room. Someone used a spoofed version of your phone number to make a fraudulent emergency call to your daughter last night. That person demanded $20,000. Minutes later, someone attempted to access her bank account and transfer that amount. Silence. Then my mother said, "That's impossible." But her voice had changed. Not much. Enough. We were asleep, she added. Someone wasn't, Quinn said. And whoever attempted the transfer used information that appears to have come from inside the family. You can cooperate or you can make this more difficult. Which would would you prefer? No one spoke on the other end. I pictured their kitchen in Spokane, the chipped mug rack, my father standing near the counter with his arms crossed, Lauren somewhere close enough to hear, but far enough to pretend she wasn't involved. Then my mother said quietly, "Can we talk to Rachel alone?" "No," I said. My own voice startled me. "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Detective Quinn." "Rachel, please." "Mom," my throat tightened, but I forced the words through. "Was it you?" "Was what me? Did you try to steal from me?" "I would never." The answer came fast, too fast. "Then who did?" Silence, long enough to make my skin go cold. When she spoke again, she sounded smaller than I had ever heard her. "Lauren wants to talk to you." I closed my eyes. "She has something to tell you." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in an interview room across from my parents and my sister. My father, Frank, looked like he had aged 5 years since sunrise. His shoulders were slumped, his face gray, his jaw working like he was chewing back words he didn't trust himself to say. My mother wouldn't look at me. Lauren was crying, not loudly, not dramatically, small, leaking sobs, like she was trying to make herself look breakable. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Rach." My hands stayed folded in my lap. If I moved them, I was afraid they would shake. "Tell her what you did," my father said. His voice was harsh, but not protective of me. Angry at the inconvenience. Angry that the mess had left the house. "Tell her all of it." Lauren wiped her nose with a tissue that had already shredded in her fingers. "I was in debt," she said. "Credit cards. I maxed them out, and then the payments got away from me. Collectors kept calling. I didn't know what to do." "How much?" Quinn asked. Lauren's eyes flicked to me, then away. 18,000. Something inside me dropped. $18,000. Close enough to explain the number. Close enough to make me sick. "And you thought stealing from me was the solution?" I asked. "I wasn't going to steal," Lauren said quickly, leaning forward. "I swear, I was just going to borrow it." The room went still. Even Detective Quinn stopped typing for half a second. "Borrow it," I repeated. Lauren nodded too hard, like if she moved fast enough, the word could become reasonable. "I was going to pay it back before you noticed." My laugh came out flat and ugly. "With what?" She looked down. No answer. Of course there was no answer, because she hadn't planned repayment. She had planned my panic, my obedience, my silence. And judging from the way my mother stared at the floor, she hadn't planned it alone. The confession didn't make it better. It made every quiet favor, every temporary loan, every guilt-soaked phone call feel like rehearsal. Lauren hadn't snapped. She had learned. "I was going to borrow it," Lauren said again, like repeating the word could bleach the crime out of it. "I was gonna pay you back as soon as I got my tax refund." "That's what you always say," I said. She flinched. Every face in the room turned toward me, but I kept my eyes on her. "Every single time. You'll pay me back after your refund, after your next paycheck, after things settle down, after you get back on your feet." My voice shook, but I didn't stop. "You never do." Lauren pressed the shredded tissue against her mouth. "I know," she whispered. "I know I'm bad with money. I know I mess everything up, but I was desperate, and I thought if I made it sound like an emergency, if Tyler was hurt, you wouldn't ask questions." Her eyes lifted to mine. "You'd just help, like you always do." Detective Quinn's expression didn't change. "So you stole Tyler's wallet," she said, "used his personal information to open an account in his name, then created a fake emergency to manipulate your sister into sending money directly into that account." Lauren shook her head fast. "I didn't think of it like stealing." My stomach turned. "Then what did you think it was?" Her lips trembled. "It's family," she said weakly. "And you have so much, Rach. You wouldn't have even missed it." "Stop!" The word came out sharper than I expected. Lauren froze. "Just stop." For the first time, something like fear crossed her face. Not guilt, not yet. Fear that the script wasn't working. Then she looked at our parents. "Tell her," she said. My mother's head snapped up. "Lauren, tell her we talked about it." "Don't," my mother said, but it was too late. The room narrowed until all I could see was my parents. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's fingers twisted together in her lap. "You knew," I said. My father looked away first. "Not about the fake call." That answer landed like a door closing. I stared at him. "What did you know?" He rubbed a hand over his face. "We knew she was going to ask you for money." And when she thought I'd say no, no one answered. The pieces clicked into place with a sound I felt more than heard. You gave her my banking information. My mother shut her eyes. I actually laughed once, a small dry sound that made Lauren cry harder. You gave her my login. We didn't think she'd... My mother started. You didn't think she'd what? Use it? I leaned forward. Why else would she need it? Detective Quinn shifted slightly. Mr. and Mrs. Whitman, she said, calm and precise. Did you knowingly provide Lauren access to Rachel's financial accounts without Rachel's permission? My father's face hardened. She's family, he said. Families share things. Quinn didn't blink. No. Families ask, thieves take. My mother made a small sound. My father's eyes flashed, but he said nothing. When someone uses that access to attempt a transfer, Quinn continued, that becomes a criminal matter. Lauren is facing possible charges for identity theft, attempted wire fraud, and unauthorized computer access. If you provided the credentials knowing she intended to use them without Rachel's consent, you may be exposed as accomplices. The word changed the room. Accomplices. My mother went pale. My father's anger drained so quickly he looked almost hollow. Lauren started sobbing again. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. You always fix things, Rach. You always make it okay. By bleeding myself dry? She recoiled. I couldn't stop now. Do you know what I've given up for this family? Do any of you? The house Matt and I keep putting off. The vacations we never take. The savings account I keep rebuilding because every few months one of you has a crisis that somehow becomes mine. My father opened his mouth. We never forced you. Yes, you did. The words cut through him. You forced me every time you called crying. Every time you made me feel like asking questions meant I didn't love you. Every time you acted like my money was proof of my loyalty. My hands were shaking in my lap. I folded them tighter. You trained me to hear panic and reach for my wallet. No one moved. And when I finally stopped, I said, you escalated. Lauren stared at the table. You lied. You stole from Tyler. You tried to steal from me. And you still want me to feel sorry for you because consequences finally showed up. For a moment, the only sound was Lauren crying into her tissue. Then Detective Quinn pulled a form from her folder. Lauren Whitman, you are being placed under arrest for attempted wire fraud and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent. Wait, I said. The word left my mouth before I understood why. Quinn looked at me. My mother looked up like she had been waiting for that exact crack in me. There it was. Hope. Small. Hungry. Familiar. Rachel, she whispered. I didn't look at her. Can I talk to you outside? I asked Quinn. Her expression was unreadable, but she nodded once. In the hallway, the air felt colder. The interview room door shut behind us, muting Lauren's sobs into something distant and thin. Before I could speak, Quinn crossed her arms. You can't make this disappear. I know. This is not a private family dispute. A financial institution flagged attempted fraud. Your brother's identity was used. There's a record trail. I know, I said again. I'm not asking you to drop it. Then what are you asking? I looked down the hallway. A vending machine hummed near the end, bright and indifferent. Somewhere behind another door, a man was arguing with someone about bail. What happens now? Quinn studied me for a moment. Lauren gets booked, likely arraigned tomorrow. First offense, no funds successfully transferred. She may be offered a plea. Probation, restitution, community service, financial counseling. Possibly no jail time if she cooperates. And my parents? If evidence shows they knowingly provided access to your accounts, they could face charges too. My throat tightened. They didn't know about the fake call. Even saying it felt like betraying myself. No, Quinn said, but they gave her your credentials so she could use them without your permission. That matters. I leaned back against the wall. $20,000. Almost a third of what Matt and I had saved. Money built from overtime, skipped dinners out, postponed plans, and quiet sacrifices nobody in my family ever counted because they only measured what I gave them. If the bank hadn't stopped it, it would have been gone. Not borrowed. Gone. And I would have been expected to forgive it because Lauren cried, my mother begged, and my father called it family. What do I do? I whispered. Quinn's face softened, just slightly. You decide whether you want to keep protecting people who were willing to destroy you. The choice wasn't whether I could save them anymore. It was whether I was willing to keep disappearing so they could stay comfortable. For the first time, the answer was no. Detective Quinn didn't give me comfort. She gave me options. You can cooperate fully, she said. Testify if needed. Provide documentation of the pattern. Texts, transfers, messages, anything that shows ongoing financial pressure. Or you can decline declined to participate beyond your initial statement. My eyes lifted to hers. Would that stop the charges? No, but it could affect how the case is handled, especially sentencing. I nodded, though it felt like my body was doing it without permission. Either way, she continued, you need to protect yourself. How? New accounts, new passwords, credit freeze, fraud alert, security questions nobody in your family can answer. She paused. And therapy. I almost laughed, but the sound stayed trapped behind my ribs. I already have that. Good, she said, because what they did wasn't only financial fraud, it was emotional abuse with a dollar amount attached. Lauren was arrested that afternoon. My parents hired a lawyer within 24 hours, using money they apparently did have when it was time to protect her. Money that hadn't existed for bills, medication, rent, or Tyler's imaginary emergency surgery. The story made local news 2 days later. Local woman accused of defrauding sister in fake emergency scam. They got details wrong. They always do. They made it sound cleaner than it was, like a desperate younger sister and a single bad decision. They left out 32 years of training. They left out every time my mother cried into the phone, every time my father said family meant sacrifice, every time Lauren took and took, then looked wounded when I finally noticed I was empty. But the core was there. Public, permanent. My phone exploded. Friends asked if I was safe. Coworkers sent cautious messages with too many question marks. Distant relatives, people who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly had opinions about loyalty and privacy. One aunt wrote, "You should have handled this inside the family." I stared at that message for a long time before deleting it. Inside the family was where the crime happened. The message that broke me came from Tyler. I can't believe Lauren did this. Then another. I can't believe mom and dad helped. Then one more. A minute later. I'm sorry they used my name. I'm sorry they made you think I was dying. I called him. We talked for 2 hours, the longest conversation we'd had in years. His voice sounded different, clearer, less coated in excuses. He told me he'd been in rehab for the past month, that he was trying to get sober, trying to stop being the reason everyone panicked, trying to become someone who didn't need rescuing every 6 weeks. I lost my wallet, he said. Yeah. But I was so focused on not falling apart, I just thought I misplaced it. I closed my eyes. I didn't know how bad it was, he said quietly, with them calling you all the time. I thought you liked helping. I did, I admitted, for a while. Until helping became financing denial, until love became a withdrawal, until every emergency ended with my account balance lower and everyone else sleeping fine. I'm sorry, Tyler said, for all of it. Every time I took money and didn't pay it back. Every time I made you responsible for my mistakes. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the first apology from anyone in my family that didn't ask me to do something afterward. Lauren took a plea deal, 2 years of probation, restitution to cover my legal fees and part of the investigation costs, 200 hours of community service, mandatory financial counseling, no contact with my financial accounts, directly or indirectly. My parents weren't charged, not formally, but as part of Lauren's probation terms, they were required to attend family counseling. My father called it government overreach. My mother called it humiliating. I called it the first bill they couldn't hand to me. I changed everything: banks, passwords, security questions, email recovery settings, phone permissions, credit reports. I put freezes everywhere I could. I added alerts so any transaction over $500 required verbal confirmation from the bank. With a code word, one nobody in my family knew. The code word was enough. 3 months after Lauren's arrest, my mother called. Her real number. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Rachel," she said carefully, "I know you probably don't want to talk to me." I said nothing. I need to say something. I waited. "I'm sorry." My hand tightened around the phone. "Not because we got caught," she said. "Not because Lauren was arrested. I'm sorry because you were right. We treated you like an ATM. We made you responsible for problems you didn't create. And when you finally stopped letting us do it, we punished you." Her voice broke, but this time I didn't rush to comfort her. "The counselor," she continued, "she's making us look at patterns. How we treated you differently from Tyler and Lauren. How we expected you to be perfect while letting them fall apart. How we used your love against you." My throat ached. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't want you to say anything," my mother whispered. "I just wanted you to know I see it now, and I'm ashamed." Silence stretched between us. For once, I let it. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said. "I don't know if I ever will be. I know. If we ever try again, it has to be completely different." "It will be." "No," I said quietly. "It has to be, or I'm done." Another silence. Then she said, "I understand." I hung up without saying goodbye. 6 months later, my phone rang at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Unknown number. My body reacted before my mind did. Heart kicking, hand reaching, that old training rising up in me like a reflex. Answer. Find out who's hurt. Find out what they need. Fix it before someone blames you. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I declined the call. If it mattered, they could leave a message. If it was real, they could call from a number I recognized. If it was an emergency, the people I trusted knew the code word. The phone didn't ring again. I lay there in the dark, listening to Matt breathe beside me, waiting for guilt to arrive. It didn't, not the way it used to. So I rolled over, pulled the blanket up, and closed my eyes. Because I learned something the hard way. Not every crisis belongs to you. Not every call deserves an answer. Not every emergency is real, and people who love you don't have to fake your brother's death to get your attention. They call from their real number. They ask. They wait for your answer. My therapist calls that healthy boundaries. I call it survival. Either way, I sleep now. And when unknown numbers call near midnight, I don't answer. I just whisper one word into the dark. Enough.